Hi, good morning, and welcome to the icse part of my channel, Lost in Literature. This morning, Kavish and I are planning to do My Greatest Olympic Prize by Jesse Owens. It was the summer of 1936. The Olympic Games were being held in Berlin because Hitler childishly insisted that his performers were members of a master race. The Aryans' nationalistic feelings were at an all time high, naturally, because Hitler's remark about his performers being superior to the others was really very sweeping, and it was not fair because Olympics, as you know, is an international sports event, and so many countries take part. So you cannot, especially if you're a host, you cannot say that your performers are superior. It's not fair at all. All right. So that was why nationalistic feelings were all aroused. All the teams coming to Berlin felt rather annoyed with Hitler's remark. In fact, some of them truly minded it. And immediately all their patriotic feelings were aroused, and each team wanted to prove to Hitler that their team was the best and that he had not made the right statement at all. I wasn't too worried about all this. I had trained, sweated, and disciplined myself for 6 years with the games in mind. That is Jesse Owens in this autobiographical piece. And he says that he had really trained, sweated for about 6 years in preparation for this event, because naturally nobody can hope to take part in the Olympics, even qualify there, unless you have put in years of hard work, strenuous practice. So that's what this poor guy had done. And while I was going over on the boat, all I could think about was taking home one or two of those gold medals. Naturally, he had to cross over in a ship. The Atlantic Ocean had to be crossed over by ship in those days because commercial flights were not available. Okay? I had my eye especially on the running broad jump, that is long jump. A year before, as a sophomore, somebody who's in the final years of schooling or in the early part of college is called a sophomore at Ohio State University. And I'd set the world's record of 26 feet 8 1/4 inches. Everyone kind of expected me to win that Olympic event, hands down, naturally, because he had set a world record. I was in for a surprise. When the time came for the broad jump finals, I was startled to see a tall boy hitting the pit at almost 26 feet on his practice leaps. He turned. Have I switched this on? No clue. Yeah, I think I have. I was startled to see a tall boy hitting the pit at almost 26 feet on his practice leaps. So there you are. This was a surprise for Jesse. He turned out to be a German named Laszlo. I was told that Hitler had kept him under wraps. Hitler had not revealed anything about Laszlo to people. He had kept him under wraps. He had been very secretive about Laszlo, evidently hoping to win the jump with him. I guessed that if Long won, it would add some new support to the Nazis' Aryan superiority theory. Okay? It would add, definitely, it would add support to the Aryan superiority theory. It would prove that uh, Hitler is right. After all, I'm a Negro. Discrimination, a little hot under the collar about Hitler's ways, I determined to go out there and really show the Fuhrer and his master race who was superior and who wasn't. An angry athlete is an athlete who will make mistakes, as any coach will tell you. Because when you're angry, you lose your judgment. You're no longer cool and you can't think clearly. I was no exception. On the first of my 3 qualifying jumps, I leapt from several inches beyond the takeoff board for a foul. He kept, you know, taking off well before the takeoff board. No, well after the takeoff board, and that was a foul. On the second jump, I fouled even worse. He went way beyond the takeoff board. Did I come 3,000 miles for this? I thought bitterly. To foul out the trials and make a fool of myself? Walking a few yards from the pit, I kicked disgustedly at the dirt. Suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to look into the friendly blue eyes of the tall German broad jumper. He had easily qualified for the finals on his first attempt. He offered me a firm handshake. Jesse Owens, I'm Lars Long. I don't think we've met. He spoke English well, though with a German twist to it. Glad to meet you, I said. Then, trying to hide my nervousness, I added, How are you? I'm fine, but the question is, how are you? What do you mean? I asked. Something must be eating you, he said, proud the way foreigners are when they've mastered a bit of American slang. You should be able to qualify with your eyes closed. And that's what everybody felt as far as Jesse Owens was concerned. Believe me, I know it, I told him. And it felt good to say that to someone. For the next few minutes, we talked together. I didn't tell Long what was eating me, but he seemed to understand my anger, and he took pains to reassure me. Although he had been schooled in the Nazi youth movement, he didn't believe in the Aryan supremacy business any more than I did. We laughed over the fact that he really looked the part though, because once again they were supposed to be really good looking. And Lars Long was. An inch taller than I, he had a lean, muscular frame, clear blue eyes, blonde hair, and a strikingly handsome, chiseled face, perfect features, the height, the muscular body, really handsome. Finally, seeing that I had calmed down somewhat, he pointed to the takeoff board. That was creating a problem for Jesse. Look, he said, why don't you draw a line a few inches in the back of the board, that's behind the board, and aim at making your takeoff from there. You'll be sure not to foul. You certainly ought to jump far enough to qualify. I don't know, I'm just beginning to think, it must be quite difficult for these long jump runners to pace themselves out in such a way that you take off exactly from that point, where the takeoff board is. So I guess they have to pace themselves right from the beginning. Otherwise, either you go a little forward or a little behind, I guess. So mentally, you have to gear up for that kind of a distance. Mentally, you have to work it out. All right? So that is what he said. Why don't you draw a line a few inches in the back of the board and aim at making your takeoff from there? Good idea. You'll be sure not to foul, and you certainly ought to jump far enough to qualify. What does it matter if you're not first in the trials? Tomorrow is what counts. Suddenly, all the tension seemed to ebb out of my body as the truth of what he said hit me. Confidently, I drew a line a full foot in the back of the board and proceeded to jump from there. I qualified almost with a foot to spare. So that's it. The third attempt, and he qualified after following Laz's advice. That night, I walked over to Laz Long's room in the Olympic Village to thank him. I knew that if it hadn't been for him, I probably wouldn't be jumping in the finals the following day. We sat in his quarters and talked for 2 hours about track and field, ourselves, the world situation, a dozen other things. So they generally sat together. He had gone to thank Laz, and they sat together and talked. Why would they talk about the world situation? You must remember that the Olympics was taking place in 1936 in Berlin, and slowly, the World War was already in the making. It was already in the making in different parts of Europe. All right, people were already vying for supremacy. So it was in the making. So that was the world situation. And of course, what they loved, sports. And when I finally got up to leave, we both knew that a real friendship had been formed. Laz would go out to the field the next day, trying to beat me if he could. But I knew he wanted me to do my best, even if that meant my winning. The right attitude, right, for a sports person. Laz really displayed that. He wouldn't mind Jesse winning. Let the best win. What an attitude. As it turned out, Laz broke his own past record. And in doing that, he pushed me up onto a peak performance. So naturally, Jesse Owens had to better his own performance if he had to beat Laz. I remember that at the instant I landed from my final jump, the one which set the Olympic record of 26 feet, 5 and 5 by 16 inches, he was at my side congratulating me, despite the fact that Hitler glared at us from the stands not 100 yards away. Laz shook my hand hard, and it wasn't a fake smile with a broken heart sort of grip either. So he was so excited for Jesse Owens. He was genuinely glad that Jesse had won. What a wonderful person this Laz Long seems. And then there is this note at the end of the lesson. You can melt down, and it has been printed in bold because this is our takeaway from this lesson. All right, you can melt down all the gold medals and cups I have, and they couldn't be a plating on the 24 karat, the pure friendship I felt for Laz Long at that moment when he won, and Laz came bounding across to congratulate him. I realized then too that Laz was the epitome of what Pierre de Coubertin, founder of the modern Olympic Games, must have had in mind when he said, the important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning, but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering, but fighting well. There should be the spirit of competition in one, because that would push us to our limits and even beyond it. But it should not be a kind of cutthroat uh, competitive effort, because honestly the best should win, and that is what any international sports should be about. And Las Long here shows the right attitude towards sports. I hope you enjoyed this and you got something out of it. If so, do subscribe to my channel and be right back for the next time we meet. Bye for now.